All right. Everyone hear me all right? Yeah, good deal. My name is Udelhofen. Thanks for coming to our session here called Solar Innovations Powering Wisconsin Communities. We've got Sterling from EDF who sponsored this presentation, and he's going to say a few words about EDF.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you all for coming here. I think this is a great session. EDF is a large-scale wind and solar developer specializing in projects of all sizes. We're very active throughout the state. We did O'Brien Solar in Fitchburg and the Dane County Airport project. But just up here to introduce the panel, I wanted to say it's been pretty impressive to see how much the market has developed over the years. In 2017, I came to my first Renew conference, and we were advertising that we had just built the largest solar project in the state, and it was 3.5 megawatts. So to go from there just 5 years ago to where we are now has been a pretty incredible growth trajectory. And it's everybody in this room and up here on the panel that have made that happen. So I'll pass it back to them, but just wanted to say thank you all for coming.
Great, thanks, Sterling, and thanks to EDF for sponsoring us. So, as I said earlier, welcome to our panel presentation, and really appreciate in advance our panelists for joining us and sharing their expertise on this topic. I'm going to introduce myself first and set the stage for the context of what we're going to talk about, and then each panelist is going to introduce themselves. So my name's Eric Udelhofen. I'm a Renew board member and work as a developer for OneEnergy Renewables. Over the past 6 years, I've worked on about 25 small utility scale projects in the state. And through the efforts of permitting those projects and working with landowners and meeting with neighbors, it's really been hammered home to me how important it is for the solar industry and the renewable energy industry in general to be a good citizen in the communities that we work and have our projects integrate well to the landscape. So, and really offer as many benefits as they can to the communities in which they're located. So that's going to be kind of the theme of what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about innovations and ideas that this group has about trying to push the envelope and really integrate better and be a better citizen. But I also want to throw out there that there are very few new ideas under the sun. A lot of what we do in Wisconsin is kind of we take ideas from other states and other areas and try to make them work here or, morph them to fit in Wisconsin better. So really interested to get input from folks in the audience. If you've been working elsewhere or know of other ideas or ways that the solar industry can innovate to become a better citizen in the communities that we operate, really want to extend that invitation for you to bring those ideas to the fore here. We're all interested in trying to push the industry forward. So there's a couple of ways that, I think having these projects be received well in the communities that they're located is it's multifaceted. There are a lot of ways to do it. Today we're going to focus on kind of three main areas, and that the two of them are really in the economics realm. So how can these projects benefit the areas and the economies in which they're located as much as possible? So both in the employment side and job training and integrating folks from that area into the clean energy workforce. And integrating, having kind of businesses that serve the renewable energy industry. We're going to talk a lot about that. And then also, what are some ways that folks can participate financially in these projects? So Cory's going to talk about that a lot more. So those are kind of two legs of the stool, and the final is dual use design or agrivoltaics. So how can these projects be designed in such a way that the land use is perceived as a contributing factor to the rural landscape and the agricultural landscape? All of our panelists are engaged with those efforts and have a lot of ideas about how we can push the ball forward there. So I'm going to pass the mic here to Josh Arnold so he can introduce himself, and then he's going to pass it on the line.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone, and thank you so much for having me, Eric, and thank you to Renew and to EDF. My name is Josh Arnold. I'm with the UW-Madison Office of Sustainability. Yeah, we got the slide up there. Thank you very much. And I'm part of the reason why I joined the university a couple of years ago was to help design a clean energy portfolio for the university to achieve its clean energy goals. And so I'm going to be speaking a little bit about some of our recent successes and also about some of the projects that we're working on and some of the challenges that we've seen out there in the market. So if you don't mind, the next slide. Just very quickly, how we are thinking about some of our clean energy opportunities at the university, kind of around three different areas when we think about different assets at the university and what our role as an institution of higher education means. It means working with our amazing students. And so in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see an image of Camp Randall in Google Project Sunroof, which is a software that we're working with students to better understand solar potential at our main campus. On top of that, you'll see a picture of the UW Arboretum Visitor Center, and that's another location where students have led projects to make that facility more efficient and also to add solar. And the large picture there that you see is actually at the O'Brien Solar Fields, the MG&E project that was built by EDF. And what you see there is students and staff from UW that are on a field trip, and we're especially happy because the MG&E staff there is also a UW alum. So we have that opportunity where the university is one of the participants in the project, help to make that happen, and it provides an opportunity for our students to have a living laboratory opportunity to experience clean energy. And while those projects are examples of our success, they are also examples of the increase in clean energy around Wisconsin. And everyone here in this room knows that we need to build more solar and create more opportunities for clean energy in Wisconsin. And one of the next steps that the university took was to think about how we could have a potentially larger impact on a specific project. And so I'll be speaking a little bit about our Kegonsa Research Campus agricultural and solar research project. So the map here that you see is just to set the stage for the location of where this project is located. It's about 10 miles from the main campus. It's located in the town of Dunn, near Stoughton, Wisconsin. And it's located at the UW Physical Sciences Lab location. And on the next slide, you'll see an overview of an aerial view of the Kegonsa Research Campus. And so what you see is the Physical Sciences Lab is sort of in the upper center on the right. And that block image that you see just below the Physical Sciences Lab was sort of the first starting point for considering what solar might look like at that campus. And I can, in the discussion, I can talk more about, why the project was located where it was and why we were thinking about putting solar in that specific location within the Kegonsa Research Campus, because there's lots of important reasons about why the project started out being located there. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see a more recent iteration of the project as it has evolved from those very first stages back a year and a half ago to a more recent discussion. And we're still in design development on this project, working with Alliant Energy and working with Sunvest Solar. But what you see in this project, besides the quick facts that you may or may not be able to read on the screen, but what you see on this project is an evolved design process that has occurred over the course of a year and a half with Alliant Energy, with Sunvest Solar, but also, most importantly, with the local community, with our researchers, with our students, to get input about how can we design a solar project that not only meets the clean energy goals that we have for the project, but also helps to demonstrate some of the opportunities for a both and at that location. So opportunities to include agricultural research and demonstration at that project. So I'm excited to talk more about that in the discussion. Some of the critical takeaways that we have so far, if you don't mind going to the next slide, some of the critical takeaways that we have so far, you'll see on this slide some of the different discussions and tours that we've developed over the last year. And some of the critical takeaways is that there's still a lot of work to be done. There's work that's needed on community engagement. There's work that's needed on education and outreach. There's a ton of work that's still needed on research, looking at the impacts to soils, looking at hydrology, microclimate, all the biophysical aspects of things. But I think there's also a lot of opportunity. And what we've also learned from the last year or so of developing this project is that there are incredible resources at the local community, at the university, and people really seem to be aligning towards supporting this project and figuring out ways where this project can help change that conversation from either or to both and. So looking forward to more discussion about that. I also want to mention that in the app, in the Whova app, I posted a question to the audience in our panel. And the question is this: what can UW do to help advance solar innovation to power Wisconsin communities? So if you have a chance in the app, we would sincerely appreciate your feedback, because we're interested in hearing from your ideas as far as what we can do. So why don't I pass it over to Sam and we'll continue.
Great, I'll see if this works. Does this mic work here? Sounds like it. My name is Sam Rikkers. I'm the COO and Deputy Secretary at Wisconsin's Economic Development.
Maybe a little closer.
Sure, happy to. Great. Sam Rikkers. I'm the COO and Deputy Secretary at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. I'm really delighted to be on this panel. One of my stints before here, I also served as the administrator in the second term of President Obama's administration for the Rural Business Cooperative Service in Washington, so helped lead our state's, our nation's energy title under the USDA. And so some of what you'll hear from Cory ties into something that I'm passionate about. WEDC, is our state's lead economic development organization, certainly recognizes that sustainability and green technology are not only good for the environment, but for our economy. A 2022 report by the Global Policy Institute predicted that investment in green technology by 2025 will reach $5 trillion. That bodes well for Wisconsin, we hope. Certainly part of that investment, part of that economic activity is on the generation side of renewable energy. That's been a reason why WEDC has been really proud to partner with a project you'll hear from Cory, with partnering with SolarShares and as well as Renew on really helping kick off Wisconsin's first community solar cooperative. But WEDC's sweet spot in this space is really on the demand side of the equation. We believe that the solar and other renewable generation elements will only be accelerated as the transition from our industry and other parts of our society to electrification accelerates. And that's where we've been more busy. Blue Line Battery, small little company based in Whitewater, Wisconsin, over the last several years has been the beneficiary of investor tax credits. All of our Wisconsin taxes pay in part benefit Blue Line Battery and its investors who are investing in that startup company based in Whitewater. And the company now is on a tear. They make modular battery systems for forklifts, automated guide vehicles, airport ground systems, mining equipment. These batteries are not only more efficient, but they're also more durable than standard lithium-ion batteries. Another company, NEMAC, not a little company based in Whitewater, but a large company headquartered in Monterrey, Mexico. They just, with WEDC's help of a $500,000 tax credit, made a $91 million investment in their Sheboygan, Wisconsin manufacturing facility, where they'll be manufacturing parts specifically for the EV supply chain. And so those investments really, we believe, are helping put Wisconsin on the map as we see a massive acceleration in EV investment and production across the country. Next, I'd like you to meet, many people in this part of the state may even know him, Isaac Shawaki. If you are a beer lover, like many Wisconsinites, you may have already heard of Octopi Brewing. But Isaac moved up from Chicago with his wife years ago with a dream to found a brewery. Now, there are some folks that have that dream. They found that little brewery, a tap room, and that's about it. But just recently, we've supported Isaac and Octopi Brewing with as it's making a $62 million investment in its facility in Waunakee, Wisconsin. What it's doing there is it's taking its 65,000 square foot production facility. Octopi Brewing has figured out that it wants to get into co-packaging, and now it's investing in a $500,000 square foot facility. But what this expansion really is, and why WEDC was so excited to be part of this project, it's a green energy expansion. The company's investments, part of that $62 million investment, included a large-scale solar project. It's on the roof, 536 kilowatts, as well, and this is really cool, a massive Tesla energy storage unit. 1,073 kilowatt storage unit. That is how Octopi in Dane County will be moving forward. Finally, I'd be remiss not to mention Ingeteam. I had the pleasure of going to Spain for my first time in my life in October. Ingeteam is a company that came to Wisconsin with WEDC's help about 10 years ago. Ingeteam had an opportunity to begin manufacturing generators that sit in industrial wind turbines all across the Midwest. And it built up that manufacturing facility in Milwaukee's Menominee Valley. It's been successful. As the infrastructure law has come down, as our country is investing massively in EV charging infrastructure, what Ingeteam now is currently doing, by the way, quick note, Ingeteam is one of the largest manufacturers of EV charging infrastructure in Western Europe. Its charging infrastructure is all across Western Europe. It is now pivoting part of its manufacturing footprint in the Menominee Valley of Milwaukee to begin, they hope, as early as this summer, to begin manufacturing EV infrastructure in Wisconsin by Wisconsinites. What I don't want to suggest, however, is that WEDC is maxed out in terms of what it can or should be doing to help fuel Wisconsin's clean energy economy. We are on the heels, released by the governor last year, of our state's first clean energy plan. We are sitting on a record state surplus, and we're also looking at the Inflation Reduction Act and all the opportunities in all of those funding pots. And so we are really excited as the clean energy economy becomes one of the largest drivers of our nation, and we hope to be part of making that part of Wisconsin.
That's a tough act to follow. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cory Neeley. I'm the first director of SolarShare Wisconsin Cooperative. And prior to joining SolarShare, I was a utility rep for WPI Joint Action Agency in Wisconsin. And then an energy entrepreneur. I left my job during the middle of the pandemic, like a crazy person would, to do a startup that was focused on helping income-constrained folks manage their homes and kind of get to the next level of energy efficiency. And while that failed, it gave me this entrepreneurship kind of mode that I was in, and really focusing on how do I help people, how do I focus on the energy topics in our state as much as possible, and that led me to this position with SolarShare Wisconsin Cooperative. What we're doing is really democratizing energy investment. And up until this point, if you wanted to invest in a solar farm, you had to be an accredited investor, a utility, or a bank. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for librarians and factory workers and all the other people that are part of our membership group. So we just started we were incorporated in 2021 with the help of Renewables Wisconsin and the grant funds from WEDC. And I was hired in January of last year. We launched our website on Earth Day to kind of point to what we were really focusing on. And in the last year, we did a share raise, raised enough money to purchase land for our first solar farm. And in that scenario, we're going to actually be landowners leasing land back to developers and the folks working on that project. It's near Boston. There's another project in that area that we're working on as well, the land purchase around that. So we've got two projects that are slated to start this spring. And really that's our proof in the pudding that this works. This cooperative model of investment does work, and it can work to do projects in the state of Wisconsin. We have a total of 74 members. We raised around $450,000 last year in our first raise. We anticipate a new raise this year to fund projects for this next upcoming year. And I think one of the great things about what we're doing is we're bringing in folks that haven't been included in the clean energy economy. Sam mentioned that a little bit. Right now, a lot of folks that are in rural areas feel like the energy or the clean energy economy is something that's happening to them versus something that's happening with them. They're not being included in this economy. And so that's causing some animosity and anger. And I want to point to a conversation we had early on at one of the planning missions or planning meetings Eric and I attended in the town of New Lisbon. And we were sitting there, and a farmer walked in, and we were all really early for the meeting, and he walks in, he sits down, he's got his arms crossed, and you could tell he was a little grumpy, and he asked a lot of questions during the meeting. It passed, but after the meeting, I beelined it over to talk to him. Turns out he's the next door neighbor of this project, and he was not too happy about it being sited next to him. And I said, well, just so you know, we're going to be neighbors. I wanted to, formally meet you, and I wanted to let you know that you could invest in this project. And it was like, boom, a light switch. It changed his mood completely. And him and his wife started talking about, well, maybe we could get sheep and put them in the farm. And this isn't such a bad deal after all. And it's like, when people feel like they're being excluded, it changes the conversation. It changes how they feel about things. And I think the goal with our cooperative, like any other cooperative, is bringing as many people in to be a part of something that's, we need other people to be a part of. So really that's our goal. This is just a little map of where these projects are. They're really just kind of straddling Boston, and we're really excited that these two projects will be a good way for us to show that this model works. But really, we're not constrained to that area. We're not constrained to we're constrained to the state of Wisconsin, and we can do projects anywhere in the state of Wisconsin. And our goal is to work with many different developers to do this. There's a lot of value in flipping the script on your utility, where most people look at utilities like, oh, I have to buy power from them, right? They there's no way for me to get power anywhere else. Well, now you're in a project that you're selling power to your utility. So these projects make a lot of sense. They change the way people feel about renewable energy projects. And I think that's important right now as we're seeing folks come up and start talking about, not in my backyard. I don't want this in here. And I like to say that our projects are kind of Goldilocks, like, they're not so big that it causes a lot of disruption, but they're also not so small that utilities don't want to buy the output. It's still cost effective, it's still providing value and helping to reduce the inflation that we saw with the natural gas and coal over the last year. So that's my quick rundown. I'm going over too far. So.
No, that was great. I guess maybe just, do you want to talk about the project specifics?
Yeah. So our first two projects, one is a 3 megawatt project, that's the Lemonweir Solar Farm here, and then the other one's 1.5 megawatts. Together they're 4.5 megawatts. We're going to be incorporating, pollinator plantings in these. As the landowner, really we have limited say in like what we can actually do in these projects, but our goal is with a lot of our projects to incorporate agrivoltaics as an option, to kind of stem that tide, or anti-solar tide of people saying, well, I just hate to see good farmland being used for solar. Well, what about a yes and? What if we're doing solar and we're providing agricultural value? And I know we'll talk a little bit about this with the Badger Voltaic program, but really the importance in making sure that these lands are being used as the best case. How do we restore the soil in our scenarios with shortgrass prairie that sequesters carbon and builds soil? How do we do things in a way that's eco-friendly and fits into the local landscape? So. These projects we're working with OneEnergy as our developer on these two projects, and we're excited to work with them as one of our member contractors. So,
great, thanks everyone. Appreciate the intros. Just wanted to build on Cory's comments there really quick. So, the cooperative that SolarShare Wisconsin Cooperative was set up based on a peer cooperative in Minnesota called Clean Energy. Cooperative Energy Futures. Yeah. I always get that wrong. Yeah. But they're doing amazing work, and we looked at their idea and said, how can we do that? How can we try to replicate this in Wisconsin? So that's what I was referring to earlier, of anyone that works in other states has ideas of ways that we can push the boundaries on any of these things. Please raise your hand or ask questions. That's what we're here for, try to learn from one another.
Yeah. If I can add to that, after our first press, I got calls from Iowa and Illinois about how could we do this in our state? And I basically gave them all of our documents that, our business plan, and said, here, take it all, whatever you need. We can't work with you because you're not in our state, but that doesn't mean we can't give you everything we have. So.
Great. So I guess I wanted to mention to any folks that are participating online, please feel free to submit questions. I'm watching the questions that come in, but also definitely want to open it up to see if any of the folks here in person have questions. And I don't know if we've got an extra microphone that we can pass out. Thanks.
Hello?
Yeah, it's on.
I don't want to, no feedback, right? This one might be for Josh. So on utility scale development, very exciting to see what's happening with agrivoltaics and additional uses. On the other side, I'm sorry, trying to think how to structure this question, but cumulative impacts from the farming community. I work for a utility scale developer, and we're trying to articulate how if you're taking a, not majority, but meaningful proportion of farmland and converting it to a non-row crop use, is there a argument for how that can reduce some of the aggregate impacts from farming inputs in a given sort of township region is that an intellectually honest argument? And are there resources or messaging that you think would be effective for saying, there are a lot of inputs that go into the water supply or into the soil, and if we're converting to a solar use that doesn't require those same inputs and might help regenerate the soil, can you make that argument, and how might you structure it so that it's not seen as attacking what might be the existing uses? Thank you.
Great, thank you for the question, and I think that's a great point in that those were some of the same topics that we looked at and discussed internally when we were thinking about exploring the first pilot project. And essentially it's this: how does an agrivoltaics project, or as we like to kind of call it, Badger Voltaics, since we're UW, how could a Badger Voltaics project add value to the community while still respecting the legacy and the tradition and the heritage of agricultural production? And I think the first point is really that it doesn't have to be an either or. And the whole idea of building our project at the Kegonsa site is really to be a demonstration to see how it can be a both and. How can we site solar and agricultural production at the same location? So that's sort of the fundamental premise of the project. So the intention there is for a demonstration, to be able to show people that these types of projects are possible and what they might look like, to offer tours, to offer education and awareness. But then I think to your point about, well, what really is the environmental impact of placing a solar project on agricultural production land, I think, to be truly intellectually honest, the answer is we don't really know. And we don't really know exactly what happens with the soils over a 40-year period. We don't exactly know what will happen with the water hydrology at the site. We don't exactly know what the microclimate will happen, what the impacts for microclimate are. So part of our mission for this project at Kegonsa is to invite our researchers to the site to actually measure the impacts over a long period of time. So we have researchers from our soils department who are setting up longitudinal studies to sample the 3 different types of soils that are found at our site. We have energy production researchers from our solar energy lab who will be assessing how different tracking devices and different racking at the site, the impacts of that over time. And the intention is to invite more and more researchers to be able to conduct that research and to really have some hard data to then be able to share with the community, with regulators, with solar developers, with interested parties, to really start to answer those questions with actual scientific data from Wisconsin.
And I just want to add a couple things. So since you're from a developer, there is a shortage of data on this topic. There's not a lot of data. There's a study in Minnesota called the PV Smart study that covers some of the soil health benefits, but really the industry needs to take a long view and recognize that it's really important for us to have real studies and real data that we can point to substantiate some of the claims that we make about how having a solar project is really a Sabbath for the soil, and it will improve the soil quality so that it will be able to then be used in agriculture better in the future. So we're talking to Josh and others at the university about trying to have long-term soil studies at our sites. And I would just encourage, it's going to take a while before that data accumulates and we have something worthwhile to say about it, but we need to take a long view as the industry. Many gigawatts of solar are needed in the state, and we need to think 5 years down the road of being able to point to some of those studies is going to be really valuable. So
We've got a question here.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Hi, I'm from Kentucky, and we are encountering resistance to some of the proposals for solar, industrial scale solar. I'd like to ask you two questions, one of which maybe is what the whole session's about, which is, when we hit the argument, solar installations are going to ruin the soil, is there a message that has been particularly effective in defanging that particular argument? And then my other factual question, which is maybe easy, if you use racking that's tall enough so the cattle can graze underneath the panels, does that enormously increase the cost of the project?
Maybe I'll take the first one, and then if anyone wants to, or sorry, the last question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes, cattle are not really financially viable. There's a couple of really small research projects around grazing cattle around solar projects, and you have to increase the height of the racking significantly. And anything above ground, any increase in height above ground, you've got to go twice as deep below ground. So it's not financially viable, unfortunately. That would make my job so easy. I wish that we could do that. But yeah, does anyone else want to mention any arguments that you've found?
It's not financially viable yet.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that people aren't working on structural fixes. Trying, right?
Yeah, I would just say that, we're really, as a nation, starting to look at our soil a little differently. This is something that kind of goes back to the 1930s, the Soil Conservation Service. But farming kind of got away from the soil conservation as an ethic. And that's what happens when you have commodity farming, large farms. It's easier to do things. We're tilling different than we have. But the USDA is putting a ton of money into regenerative ag right now. I've got some friends that are starting their regenerative ag farm in southwest Wisconsin right now. And I think it's really important that we do focus on soil, because without soil, we have no farms. And I think farmers recognize that, they understand that. I think they just need to move away from, input heavy, farming, which, with the inflation that we've seen in the last year of nitrogen and all the other chemicals that they're putting out there, should be an easier case to make. And I just wanted to point that out. The USDA is doing a lot of this work. Maybe that's an opportunity for us to work with them and our state agencies to kind of really focus on this stuff. And because the science isn't there, scientists are or farmers are original scientists. They're the geneticists. They help to develop a lot of this stuff. They're okay with learning on the fly, as long as they know where they're going down the road. So.
I just.
One more here and then
Perfect. Yep.
Thanks. I live in the Driftless. I work with Rotary International, and we're hearing in India folks are pushing for agrivoltaics because plants grow better under the shade of the solar panels. Are you looking at, as we move deeper into climate change, which Wisconsin ag products will actually flourish underneath the panels?
I could probably speak to that. So we know that brassicas do better under cool climate. The Wisconsin summers are getting warmer. I don't know if you've noticed in the last year, your broccoli bolts faster under extreme heat. Any plant that really struggles with extreme heat will do better. The question is always, is it commercially viable? What can we grow for markets? What can we grow for other folks? But the other great thing about this is, if we're able to do this and pull this off, in agrivoltaics, we're allowing people to get access to land cheaper, or maybe possibly being paid to farm, which lowers the cost for all these vegetables in these communities that are, most Wisconsin communities are actually, they're poor, in the rural communities at least. And so they struggle to get access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So this is another way for us to kind of boost the economy in that area and help, with nutrition for those folks as well. So.
Yeah, and just to build on Cory's point too, just to respond to your question, thank you for the question. And so what we're doing at our site, we brought the image back up just so I could share a little bit more detail about some of the different plans and thinking that we have at the site. So this is our Badger Voltaics pilot site that we are developing with Alliant Energy. The university is leasing land to Alliant Energy. Alliant Energy is building and the project and will own and maintain it. And so we have the research intention here is to break up the project essentially into about 3 zones. So it's a little bit tricky to see, but the northernmost zone, the shaded in green, that zone is designed to be demonstration and awareness, and that's somewhere where we have researchers from UW Extension and our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences looking at different options that might be possible at that location. Hazelnuts, for example, is something that has been considered as possibly a good fit. And then that center section, you see, at this point, we are planning on single-axis trackers. So those trackers, are typically in a typical utility designed project. Those trackers are set so that they track the sun, right? So they go track the sun from east to west. What we are hoping that we might be able to do is have some of our researchers working with the engineers at Alliant Energy who will continue to operate the project, but some of our researchers will be working with them to better understand if any of the tracking algorithms may be able to be designed to do some experiments with plant production versus energy production, for example. Again, to be determined, but that's something that some of our researchers are looking at. And then just briefly, the southernmost section of the project, that's an area where we expect to be exploring different types of ground cover underneath a fixed tilt solar system. So with these 3 different components of the project, the intention here is to be able to create an opportunity to experience the project firsthand, education and awareness, some additional research, and exploring opportunities to apply this type of project to other locations. So those are some of the additional research areas that we're looking at.
Great, and gotten a couple questions from the audience for us to define agrivoltaics, so I'm going to jump on that one really quick. Apologize we didn't start with that, but agrivoltaics is basically the use of land within a large-scale solar project for some sort of agricultural production. Different people have different specific definitions of what that means. Sometimes it's referred to as dual-use solar, but the general premise is to try to make it, like Josh was saying, a both-and rather than an either-or. We have several projects in Wisconsin where the vegetation maintenance is being done by sheep, so that's one pretty obvious example of agrivoltaics. We also have a few projects in the state where we found a local beekeeper who's going to be hosting an apiary on the site, and because it's planted a pollinator habitat, presumably they'll have better forage, and so we're really excited about that. And there's a lot of things you can do with solar honey to kind of make it something that people can experience with their mouths. So in Minnesota, they've had solar beer that's brewed with solar honey. There's kind of a whole host of ways that you can incorporate that, But yeah, it really depends, I think, on who you ask, what counts, and whether a community believes that something is agricultural, and that's highly variable. And generally speaking, I think what the industry perceives as agricultural is much different than what a community perceives as agricultural. So one of the things we've been talking to Josh about and several others is trying to push the boundaries on ways that we can incorporate some type of agricultural production within a solar facility. So a couple ideas we've had are baling hay with a small hay bine, then possibly having a manure injector so that a dairy could use some of the land within a project, similar to how they use land on a lot of the acres that are leased by dairies now. That's one idea, a lot of complications with it, but I think it's something to try. But everyone needs to get creative about ways that there's going to be tens of thousands of acres converted to solar, and that's a lot of land that could be used well by creative folks involved in the industry. We had a couple other questions on HUVA. One was for Cory. You mentioned that SolarShare is the landowner of the Lemonware project, and then you're leasing the land to a developer. Can you describe the relationship? And for this project, and then I'm just gonna also say, can you also explain some of maybe what your business model could be in the future with other projects?
Yeah. So so you could probably speak to it as well as I could.
And related, sorry, but also you might as well answer, how can you become a member?
Yeah,
Since that's another question on there.
Becoming a member is super easy. Actually, you can just visit our booth today, take a picture of the thing, and it'll take you right to the website to join. The relationship with the developer in this project, which is OneEnergy and Eric's crew over there, is really they helped us get the project actually rolled in. When we built our business plan, we anticipated just trying to be part of a capital stack in a project. And what we found is actually, as being landowners, early on, it really is helpful in that we own property, and our project is kind of backed by the ownership of real property. And it allowed our members to kind of have some peace of mind that this wasn't just some startup idea that was kind of not all that not that secure. But really, we want to make sure that the people know that this is more like turtle investing. It's not the hare. This is slow and steady wins the race. And that's when you think about solar investment, you look at a solar farm. It's not all that sexy. It just does what it does. It builds. It harnesses the power of the sun and produces energy, and it does it for long periods of time with little to no major issues. So I guess our relationship with developers is usually you bring us a project, we'll put it out to our membership and see if it, our board to decide if it makes sense for us, and then raise money to help fund it. Going along with some of the things and the question around what UW can do to help is just continue on the Wisconsin idea and spread this around the state. This the first project we're doing, we're going to be donating some of the panels. Actually, OneEnergy will be donating some of the panels to Boston Area School District, and our goal is to have them do an agrivoltaics project. Now, could we take that idea and spread it across the state with KEEP and try and have every FFA / tech ed school work together, to build an agrivoltaics project? You're teaching kids to learn two different skills in that scenario, to feed themselves and provide their own energy. So I think there's opportunities here for that Wisconsin idea, and maybe the kids that participate can come visit the Badger Voltaics as an option to learn more and maybe see if it's a career path that they want to do. So there's more we can do.
And maybe just to build on that really quick, to appeal to anyone that's in the solar industry, especially working on larger projects, please consider donating panels to local schools where your projects are. It totally changes the way that people perceive the industry if they see that, hey, this thing is benefiting the school that's up the street, or my kids are learning about what it's like to how a solar produces on different types of days. So MREA has been instrumental in spreading solar on schools around the state, and Renew's very involved with that work as well, and KEEP. So there's a lot of infrastructure on the nonprofit side to help build curriculum around those projects. But just having communities have a positive experience with solar where they may not otherwise is really valuable. So I'd just take some of your spare panels and donate them to local schools, please.
There's more questions out here. We're theoretically supposed to end at 11:30, just so you know, but what do you guys think? Do you want to keep taking questions?
Yeah, I know there's a couple in the audience. I know there's one right up here too.
Okay. For your game.
Yeah, if
Carol's
people need
got
to leave, don't feel bad walking out, but
Here's a quick comment.
This goes to the fellow of the energy developer. Asked the first question. Last week, the Wisconsin Energy Institute, which is, I think, based out of UW here in Madison, held a carbon capture workshop. And those presenters had a lot of information about the carbon sent into the air through farming, through tilling the soil, through nitrogen, dehydration, through the equipment that they use in the fields, and just from livestock. So if you want to take, that's a good place to look for some information about what farming does as far as sending carbon into the air.
maybe real quick while you're finding the next question, Sam.
That guy down there was next.
Oh, okay. We've talked a lot about agrivoltaics, and I wanted to come back to some of the jobs and workforce elements that WEDC is involved with. I guess, how do you see the renewable energy industry being able to honestly say to folks that, hey, these are, the renewable energy industry can offer family supporting jobs, both in manufacture or installation?
I think there are a number of reports that have come out across the Midwest and Wisconsin that show the economic opportunity of those type of jobs, and it's helpful in our state as some industries are transitioning, that there's a new burgeoning industry where those jobs are available. It's really been a fascinating conversation. I'm interested to see that there are the developers here, because whether it is in the developers, the businesses that are investing to really ride this incredible potential, but in any place in our state right now, in any sector, one of the greatest limiting factors is our workforce. So you might have all this opportunity, but you either don't have the bodies, or you don't have the bodies with the skills. A couple days ago, at his State of the State address, the governor announced that his budget will include a $10 million investment in clean energy job training across our state. Those type of investments to take the talent we have here and pivot how we're training our folks to really provide the workforce. I think we can talk all about putting the financing in place, figuring out how we deal with the NIMBYism and bring in folks from communities. So I love it all, so they feel ownership all across their state. But if we don't have the workforce in Wisconsin to actually put the hammer down and get this done, we're gonna stumble. So I'm excited by those proposals, but it'll take work by our state to really come together and make those investments.
Yeah, just a question or a comment. I have a friend who's a farmer, also a county board supervisor. And as it pertains to soil health, he basically, and there's several farms that are being solar farms being looked at in our area. And he's an agronomist. And so constructing a solar farm, his position was, well, it's a construction site. And so in 40 years, Mother Nature took millions of years to make good soil. It's not going to be restored. I think you have to, if you're a developer, you have to think about the messaging, because most of the land is not disturbed when you build the solar farm. And so if you're not dumping Roundup, if you're not tilling it, if you're not adding fertilizer, and it's mostly grass and you keep it green, intuitively, you can study it all you want, but intuitively, logically, it's got to be good for the soil. It's got to be good for minimizing runoff, water quality, all of those things. So we should hit on be careful to just not treat it as a construction site. The other thing I'll say that in our area, and I know there's a definite incompatibility of siting projects. You like flat land. That happens to also be the most prime farmland. And that puts resistance hairs up on rural people in particular, because they don't like seeing the best, most productive land being taken out of production and used for. So even though you might be benefiting the soil, water quality, that kind of thing. So again, messaging and maybe even considerations in siting that we're only going to use a certain percentage of prime farmland in a farm or something like that. But that is a concern for people that are, tied to the land. So.
Yeah, great point. I hear that argument pretty much every time we permit a project, and it's something that the industry needs to develop really solid talking points. I saw Chelsea has her hand up, and I know Clean Wisconsin just put out a really awesome report on that, so hopefully we can come back to Chelsea. But yeah, we do talk about kind of how much of land goes to growing corn that then produces ethanol, so farmers are in the energy business already, and but I'll leave most of that answer to Chelsea.
Good morning. I have a piece of land that I've been trying to develop, and I've been talking to a lot of the neighbors in my area, and some of the input I'm getting is good results, because I put a street right through a development straight through the farm, and the local people love that I'm growing corn around the farm. And they also like the idea that I'm putting in solar. And some of the things that they were asking that I would put in or think about would be putting in dog parks around underneath the solar panels. The other one was there was a big need for community gardens to be put in, which probably would work very well as long as it's kept out of the electrical part of it. But that was some of the big inputs that I had in our local area was community gardens and dog parks, and then bees was another big one that they were looking at. Just an input that I had.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's exactly the kind of input that can create, if you think about a community-based generation concept where the community is inviting a neighbor such as yourself who is being thoughtful and engaging with your neighbors and getting their input. That's a great example of what might be coming from that specific community. And I think that's also an area where on the regulatory side or the zoning side, there's a need for more opportunities to have meaningful input, because really the system that's currently set up just really is not conducive to extended conversations. Developers don't necessarily have the resources to have extended community conversations, although some really go above and beyond. So that is really an area at the university where we're looking to develop more programming through our extension program and other programs where maybe extension officers or other resources at the university can be trained and help facilitate community-based energy conversations around the state. So thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I work for Clean Wisconsin, and I'm also an organic farmer, so issues around kind of compatibility of solar with our agricultural economy is near and dear to my heart. And I just wanted to share in response to some of the discussions, like Eric mentioned, Clean Wisconsin did put out a report just a couple days ago that's basically looking at the land use efficiency of solar energy and comparing that with ethanol, which we are obviously using a lot of our ag land for right now to produce energy. Right now, 1 million acres out of the 4 million acres total of corn are used to produce ethanol. And according to our analysis, solar can get 100 times more energy per acre than ethanol can. And so I think that is pretty compelling. I think that it's really important to share some of that context when we have conversations about, pitting solar against ag and just just thinking about some of our other current land uses and how we're producing energy right now. So really interested in conversations about not just integrating solar directly with growing food through agrivoltaics, but also what we're doing in terms of biofuels. What are some of the other competing land uses in rural areas, more housing developments and things like that. So if you're interested, that report is on our website right now, and I'd be really glad to talk with other people about those issues too. Thanks.
Thanks, Chelsea. Any other questions?
Yeah, we got one more out here. And there's some great questions in the thing too, but.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Scott Semrock. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Sun Prairie, and what I'm hoping you can help us with is a takeaway. We get a lot of questions about solar development, large utility scale systems, and I think I'm really focused on site identification. If you have rules of thumb or orders of operation, how does a municipality, a community, Cory, we're a WPPI member, we talk about this all the time. Where do we start? How do we go look at our city-owned parcels, or how do we approach a developer and say, where do we want to site the system? What are the conditions for agrivoltaics or wetlands or other dog parks, property use types? Where is our template to start? I would love to see some guidelines there. I'm curious your thoughts.
So, well, from my time as a energy services manager at WPI, we had folks come to us at various times, with ideas. And, when we go to the cities, it really came down to land use and future land use ideas. What would be the greatest and best use for this land if it was city owned? The goal really with most projects is to be close to the distribution network system. So 3-phase line, substation, being as close as possible, reducing the amount of energy loss in that scenario and getting it metered as quickly as possible. So that's the stuff that Eric has kind of instilled in us. When folks reach out to me, I say, can we, give me your address? We can kind of look that up and see where you're at. But really, that's the kind of nuts and bolts of it. You got to be close to the distribution network. So,
and it's a great question to be asking as the city of Sun Prairie, because no developer is going to be able to go find an open parcel of land in Sun Prairie that they can cost effectively develop to generate solar. So, really the only way that larger projects are going to happen in your territory is probably if the city owns it, or there's some other entity that is willing to entertain a lease that is not competing with commercial development or residential development.
And brownfield development potentially
brownfield,
too.
Absolutely. We had a similar conversation with the City of Middleton 6 years ago, and kind of looked at all their city-owned parcels, basically trying to find the convergence of those factors that lead to a successful project. It's, proximity to the distribution system. It's got to be the right size 3-phase line, but then you want to avoid wetlands to, as much as possible. You are always looking at what it's going to look like to the neighbors and how it's going to be received by folks that can see the project. And then, floodplains. There's kind of a host of due diligence items. We're looking at depth of bedrock, which you're probably not going to be really concerned about in that area. But I think canvassing any city-owned properties through all those various filters is something that any solar developer would be able to work through. There's a lot of consulting firms at this point that are really active in the state on the engineering side and due diligence side that have all those screens built into pretty quick online platforms that they can look at that stuff for you.
Yeah, and a couple quick points to add too. As we were developing our project, going through discussions with the local township, Town of Dunn, developed a solar ordinance, and we were able to discuss some aspects of the ordinance with them, and really appreciate the collaborative nature of that discussion. One of the things that the first version of the ordinance did not include, which I would recommend including in the future and has since been updated, is just the ability to have a variance or have some flexibility for any specific issues. So that's something that as the local township there was developing their ordinance, was not initially included and then was subsequently amended. And you can look up their ordinance online, and it has a lot of good features similar to what Eric and Cory were describing. Second point is that in terms of assessing parcels, the university manages over 15,000 acres across the state of Wisconsin on behalf of the Board of Regents. So think about extension properties, agricultural research stations, et cetera. And we actually have researchers who are doing that same type of filter now for the properties that UW manages. And so if there's any information that you'd be interested in, we'd be happy to share some.
And maybe just one other quick thing. In Middleton, we had to get creative around the siting because it is so hard to find land in the growing urban areas. So don't take all of those results at face value. You sometimes have to push the envelope a little bit. And maybe one other quick idea is, like, on the outskirts of big cities, especially Madison, there's land that is in conservation easement for agriculture, and it's rented to small farmers that maybe farm for the farmers market. And I've been thinking that would be a really cool arrangement. Some of the conservation easements are starting to incorporate language to allow large-scale solar as a land use in certain areas. So if you could have one of those agricultural conservation easements allow solar if it includes agrivoltaics, and then have a small farmer that farms a couple acres of the site, that would be amazing. And they a lot of times use like smaller tractors that walk behind tractors, so you don't have to worry about some of the issues that come with trying to farm with a larger tractor between solar panels. So.
Okay, we were done 20 minutes ago.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the questions.